Hey, Pastor Steve Waldron here, New Life Pentecostal Church, Albany, Georgia. I hope you're having a great day in Jesus. I want to talk to us just for a little while today on what the fossil record looks like and what the fossil record should look like. Now, a lot is made about transitional species. A lot of times when I do videos on transitional fossils and these type things, people will say, you know, here's a quick Wikipedia search or here's a quick Google search, and here is, you know, a Google search brought up a million things, and not knowing that, you know, 999,000 plus those could be talking about the same transitional fossil, you know, Archaeopteryx or something like that. So it's people that haven't studied this for a long time and that type thing. So, but what the fossil record should look like, and even Darwin said this, and he said the reason it didn't look like that in his day is just because it was incomplete. They found billions of fossils since Darwin's day, and it's still the same way. So the fossil record should look like something, and, you know, it goes back and forth on what descended from what and what came from what, and on and so forth. But let's just say from a fish to a fowl, so to speak, fish to a fowl. Sometimes this may go the opposite direction. It depends on what theory, what the suit of the day is in Darwinian evolution. So you should find in between this all types of transitional species that it's very obvious that they're transitional fossils that are making that journey, again, from whatever the soup du jour is, and you don't find that. What you find is fully formed, fully filled things. Everything is just the way it is. And the more we learn about different species and the precision of the entirety of even the smallest, you know, like butterflies. I was reading a thing about butterflies recently. Then you realize that evolution is absolutely impossible. So the evidence is not there for evolution. Microevolution or adaptive changes within the genetic structure is not indicative of evolution. That's just the ability to DNA to change very slightly depending on the circumstances, but it never crosses the boundary lines, the biblical boundary lines of kind. And mutations are never beneficial. They're always something that denigrates the species, denigrates the DNA, never enhances the DNA. And so everything you find is something that is not transitional. And the complexity of each different species and kind is something that could not have transitioned. Partial systems don't work. It's like a car, you know, it's got to have the engine and the carburetor and the fuel system and the fuel tank and the electronics, everything working in unison, the ignition system for it to work. And if anything's out, the car's not working. And that's the way these systems are. And so a partial system, if you just have a carburetor that's half built or something, or an engine that's half built, or spark plugs that only reach one side, not the other side, if they even still use spark plugs on cars anymore, I don't know. It doesn't work. So this is what the fossil record should look like, and it just doesn't look like that. What the fossil record looks like is you have species, kind, fully formed. Now, sometimes you'll have like a duck-billed platypus today. You may have some species that'll have characteristics, like a dinosaur with feathers or something like that. But these would be just omni-attributable animals. These would not be transitional species because you don't find bridges on either side of them. They're just independent themselves. And so, the key to this as well, as far as evidence goes, you shouldn't be just finding maybe that's a transitional species, maybe that's one here out of, you know, billions of fossils. You may have a few hundred that maybe could be construed, but there's a possibility they're not upon further examination and all that. The overwhelming amount of fossils that are found should be transitional species, because to make it from fish to fowl or from dinosaur to bird or something like this, well, then that should take millions of years of changes, gradual changes, to reach that point. And so you have fully formed gradual changes. Well, the gradual changes would be much more expansive, one would think, if evolution was true in the fossil record. It's just not. It's not there. So evolution is a fraud. Evolution, as David the Giant sang, jokingly, evolution is pollution, and all this kind of stuff. I understand many scientists believe in it. Many scientists don't believe in it. And if you study like the X Club in England in the late 19th century, you see how they kind of gained the levers of power and only brought people in that would further evolutionary dogma and tended to promote them within the sciences. But even in the United Kingdom, of course, you got the creation science movement there, you got the Great Museum of Creation Science, and a lot of the leading scientists in the world from England. I'm thinking of one guy, I can't think of his name right now, he had like 3 PhDs, considered to be preeminent, was a creationist, and many of the great scientists in England, and I'm talking about in the post-Darwin age, not in the Newtonian age and the Pascal stage, but the post-Darwin age, we're still creationists and are still creationists to this day. So everything that I read, everything that I examine, and then just common sense tells me evolution could not have happened. And I think if you quit looking at things at this broad-based spectrum and really get down into, okay, what had to happen for something to go from bacteria or flagellum or something to this? What are the stages that had to happen? What are the possibilities of these stages happening? What is the evidence that this has ever happened? Is it replicatable in a controlled environment? And with intelligent design trying to replicate it, is it even possible? Does DNA? And I think if you begin to look at it from that aspect, you begin to see that evolution is not true. And if you begin to really read Genesis 1, 2, and 3, you begin to see this is what we see. This is, you have male, female, each species. They have to have special characteristics for procreation, from bone structure to, capabilities, from egg to, sperm, all of these different things. And it has to be a creative act of God. And it has to be an instantaneous. A female can't evolve and then a male with these particular things happen to evolve at relatively the same time. And then before they got to that point, how were they procreating? How were the species getting there? It just doesn't make any sense. So this is what the fossil record should look like. This is what it looks like. What it looks like is Genesis chapters 1, 2, and 3, and Genesis 6, 7, and 8 with a great worldwide flood. So I love you, and we love evolutionists, and we care for them. And I'm going to tell you, as a young man, I used to believe in it. I used to write science fiction as a teenager, and I just ran across one of my old stories cleaning out my dad's house about a satellite AI. I was writing about AI in the late 70s, early 80s because of influence of my brother running the Atlanta Comics and Science and Fantasy Fair, and H.P. Lovecraft, Ray Bradbury, and Gene Roddenberry, and all of this that about an AI saying in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and it was something, and it just really is craziness. But I was an evolutionist, and it just doesn't match the facts. And so God bless. I love you. Talk with you later in Jesus' name.